The sun hung low over the jagged peaks of the Rocky Mountains, casting long shadows across the pine-scented trails of Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. It was late afternoon in early fall, and the air carried a crisp bite that hinted at the changing season. Jake Harlan, a 42-year-old wildlife photographer from Denver, had been trekking these paths for over a decade. With his weathered backpack slung over one shoulder and his camera dangling from his neck, Jake paused to snap a few shots of a mule deer grazing in a distant meadow. He lived for these moments. The solitude of the wilderness, the raw beauty that no city skyline could match. But today, something felt off. Dark clouds were gathering on the western horizon, rumbling faintly like a distant warning. Jake adjusted his hiking boots on the uneven dirt path, his mind wandering to the forecast he'd checked that morning. A storm was brewing, the kind that could turn these trails into muddy rivers overnight. He quickened his pace, aiming to reach the trailhead before the rain hit. The forest around him was alive with the subtle sounds of nature, the rustle of aspen leaves, the call of a Steller's jay overhead. But then, cutting through the familiar chorus, came a high-pitched cry, sharp, desperate, almost human in its plea. It wasn't a bird or a small animal, it was something bigger, more vulnerable. Jake froze, his heart rate picking up. He scanned the underbrush, ears straining. There it was again, faint but insistent, coming from behind a fallen log about 20 yards off the trail. Before the story goes deeper, make sure to subscribe for more narratives like this. He approached cautiously, his boots crunching softly on the pine needles. Mountain lions, cougars as locals called them, were elusive in these parts, more myth than reality for most hikers. But Jake knew better. He'd photographed their tracks before, seen the occasional scat-marking territory. This sound, though, didn't match an adult. It was too small, too plaintive, like a kitten mewling for its mother. Pushing aside low-hanging branches, he spotted the log, a massive moss-covered pine that had toppled years ago, its roots still clawing at the sky. The cry emanated from the shadowed crevice beneath it, where the earth dipped into a natural hollow. Jake knelt down, peering into the dim space. His breath caught as he made out a tiny form huddled there. A mountain lion cub, no bigger than a house cat, its tawny fur matted with dirt and what looked like dried blood. The cub's eyes, wide and golden, locked onto Jake's face. It let out another cry, weaker this time, its small body trembling. One of its hind legs was twisted at an odd angle, probably caught in the fall of some branch or worse, attacked by something larger, no sign of the mother anywhere. Perhaps she'd been scared off by hikers or scavengers, or maybe she was out hunting and hadn't returned. Jake's stomach twisted with a mix of awe and urgency. These cubs were rare to spot in the wild. Spotting one in distress was unheard of. He pulled out his phone, but the signal was non-existent, this deep in the park. The clouds above were thickening now, the first drops of rain pattering against the leaves like impatient fingers. "Easy there, little guy," Jake murmured, his voice low and steady, the way he'd talked to spooked wildlife on shoots. He extended a hand slowly, palm up, but the cub hissed, baring tiny fangs and scrambling back deeper into the hollow. Its cries turned frantic, echoing off the log. Jake's mind raced. Leaving it here wasn't an option. With that injury, it wouldn't last the night, especially if the storm unleashed its full fury. Flash floods were common in these canyons, and hypothermia could set in fast for something so small and wet. He shrugged off his backpack, rummaging for the emergency kit he'd always carried since a close call with a twisted ankle years back. Inside was a lightweight blanket, some energy bars, and a small flashlight. Nothing for sedating a wild animal, but maybe he could improvise a sling or something to carry it out. The rain picked up, drumming harder on the forest canopy. Jake glanced at his watch. 4:17 p.m. The trailhead was 2 miles away, and darkness would fall soon. He needed help, but calling park rangers meant hiking back first, and by then the cub could be gone, or dead. Swearing under his breath, he edged closer, speaking softly to keep it calm. "I'm not gonna hurt you, buddy. Just hang in there." The cub's cries softened into whimpers as he tossed a corner of the blanket toward it, letting the scent of human and fabric mingle with the damp earth. Inch by inch he coaxed it nearer, his heart pounding with the thrill and terror of the moment. This wasn't just a photo op, this was life or death in the wild. As the downpour intensified, turning the ground slick, Jake finally got close enough to see the extent of the damage. The cub's leg was swollen, likely broken, and there were scratches along its side, maybe from thorns or a predator's claws. It nuzzled weakly against the blanket, exhaustion winning over fear. Gently, Jake wrapped it up, feeling the rapid flutter of its heartbeat against his palm. It was heavier than it looked, maybe 10 pounds, but manageable. He stood, cradling the bundle against his chest, and started back down the trail. The path was steeper now, mud sucking at his boots, and the wind howled through the trees like a living thing. Thunder cracked overhead, illuminating the forest in stark flashes. Jake's muscles burned as he navigated a rocky descent, the cub's occasional mules urging him on. Half a mile in, doubt crept in. What if the mother was nearby, stalking him through the storm? Cougars were protective, and an injured cub could draw her back fiercely. He scanned the shadows, rain blurring his vision, but saw nothing but swaying branches. His mind flashed to his wife, Sarah, back in Denver. She'd always teased him about his wilderness obsessions, but she'd be the first to understand this. If he could just get to his truck, he could drive straight to the park headquarters. The rain sheeted down now, soaking through his jacket. But Jake pressed on, the weight of the cub a reminder of why he loved these mountains. Their unforgiving beauty, the fragile lives hidden within. By the time he reached a clearing, the storm had fully unleashed, lightning forking across the sky, illuminating the cub's wide eyes peeking from the blanket. Jake's phone buzzed faintly. A bar of signal at last. He dialed the ranger station, shouting over the roar of the wind. "This is Jake Harlan on the Bear Lake Trail. I've got a mountain lion cub injured. Need backup now." The voice on the other end crackled with surprise, promising a team within the hour. As he waited, sheltering under a rocky overhang, the cub licked his hand weakly, a tiny gesture of trust amid the chaos. The rescue was just beginning, but in that moment, with the storm raging around them, Jake felt the raw pulse of the wild connecting them both. The ranger's voice crackled through the phone one last time before the signal dropped again, swallowed by the storm's fury. "Stay put, Harlan. Teams en route. ETA 30 minutes. Keep that cub warm." Jake nodded to himself, though no one could see, and tucked the phone away. 30 minutes felt like an eternity out here, with rain hammering the earth like nails into a coffin. He shifted under the overhang, the rocky shelf providing scant protection as water cascaded down its edges, forming rivulets that snaked toward his boots. The cub, bundled in the damp blanket, pressed closer to his chest, its warmth a fragile anchor against the chill seeping into his bones. Jake leaned back against the cold stone, his mind replaying the day's surreal turn. He'd come out here for golden hour shots of elk rutting in the meadows, not to play savior to a predator's kin. Mountain lions were apex creatures in these parts, solitary hunters that commanded respect and fear. Spotting a cub was like stumbling on buried treasure. It spoke to the hidden rhythms of the wild, the ones that thrived beyond human trails. But this one was broken, its future hanging by a thread. Jake stroked its fur gently with a gloved finger, feeling the ribs beneath, too prominent for a healthy animal. "You're a fighter, aren't you?" he whispered, more to himself than the cub. It responded with a soft rumble, not quite a purr, its golden eyes half-lidded in the dim light. Thunder rolled again, closer this time, vibrating through the ground. Jake's thoughts drifted to his own life, the quiet domesticity waiting back in Denver. Sarah would be prepping dinner by now, maybe that chili she made with venison from last year's hunt. Their two kids, Mia and Tyler, would be glued to screens, oblivious to the mountain's moods. He'd tell them this story over breakfast tomorrow, embellish it just enough to spark their imaginations without scaring them. But beneath the adventure, a knot of worry tightened. What if the rangers couldn't save it? Euthanasia was a real possibility for wildlife too far gone. And the cub's leg looked bad, puffy and hot to the touch, infection likely setting in. Headlights pierced the gloom suddenly, cutting through the sheets of rain like beacons. Two park service jeeps bounced into the clearing, their tires churning mud. Jake waved his free arm, relief flooding him as four figures emerged, clad in neon vests and rain gear. Leading them was Ranger Elena Vasquez, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with a ponytail streaked grey from years under the sun. She'd patrolled these trails longer than Jake had hiked them, her face etched with the lines of someone who'd seen nature's cruelties up close. "Harlan, you the one with the cat?" Elena shouted over the wind, her boots splashing as she approached. Her team, two techs and a vet from the Wildlife Rehab Center, fanned out, one carrying a large pet carrier, another a medical kit. "Yeah, right here," Jake replied, carefully unwrapping the blanket to reveal the cub. It mewled in protest, twisting weakly. Eleanor knelt beside him, her expression shifting from professional detachment to quiet awe. "Damn, it's a kitten, all right. How'd you find it?" "Behind a log off the trail, crying like it was calling for help, legs busted and it's scratched up pretty good." Eleanor nodded, gloving up as she examined it. The vet, a young guy named Dr. Patel with a stethoscope around his neck, shone a light on the injury. "Compound fracture, possible lacerations from a fall or fight. Dehydrated but responsive. We can stabilize it here." He worked quickly, administering a mild sedative from a syringe, then splinting the leg with padded wraps. The cub went limp, its cries silenced at last, but its chest rose and fell steadily. The team moved with practiced efficiency, transferring the cub to the carrier lined with fresh towels. Jake stood back, watching as they secured it in the jeep's back seat, away from the storm's worst. Elena clapped him on the shoulder. "Good call getting it out. Mother's probably long gone. Poachers or a bad hunt could explain it. We'll get it to the Estes Park rehab facility. If it pulls through the night, chances are good." As the jeeps revved to life, Jake climbed into the lead vehicle at Elena's insistence. The drive back was a blur of wipers, slapping rain, and radio chatter coordinating with bass. Lightning illuminated the twisted pines along the road, their branches clawing at the sky like desperate hands. Jake's adrenaline ebbed, replaced by a bone-deep fatigue. He'd gotten the cub out before the storm peaked, but the real work was just starting for it. Weeks of care, maybe release back into the wild if luck held. By the time they reached the ranger station, the downpour had eased to a steady drizzle. The facility's lights glowed warmly against the night, a hub of activity even at this hour. Dr. Patel and his assistant whisked the carrier inside, where X-rays and fluids awaited. Elena handed Jake a hot coffee from the break room, her eyes appraising. "You did right by that little one. Not many would have stuck around in this weather." Jake sipped the brew, its bitterness grounding him. "Couldn't leave it. Felt like, I don't know, like it chose me to hear it." She chuckled softly. "The wild has a way of doing that. Come back tomorrow if you want updates. And hey, if you're into it, we could use volunteers like you." He nodded, the offer lingering as he stepped out into the cooling air. The storm had passed, leaving the mountains washed clean, stars peeking through rifts in the clouds. Driving home on the winding highway, Jake's mind replayed the cub's cries, the trust in its lick. Sarah was waiting on the porch when he pulled up, her arms wrapping around him before he could speak. "Rough day?" she asked, sensing the weight. "You have no idea," he said, pulling her close. Inside, as he recounted the tale to wide-eyed kids, the story felt bigger than him, a reminder of the thin line between observer and participant in nature's grand, indifferent play. Weeks later, a call from Eleanor brought news. The cub, dubbed Echo by the rehab team, had mended. Its leg healed straight, scars fading under tawny fur. It thrived on a diet of rabbit and venison, growing bolder each day. Jake visited once, watching from behind glass as Echo paced its enclosure, eyes fierce and alert. Release was planned for spring, back into the peaks where it belonged. In that moment, Jake felt the circle close. Not just a rescue, but a bond forged in rain and thunder, a whisper of the wild echoing long after the storm.